It was the second week of October, and I'd been working late on a website redesign for a client in Seattle. I'm a freelance graphic designer, which means I mostly live in hoodies and fuzzy socks and spend far too much time staring at my dual monitors in the glow of my desk lamp. That night was one of those cozy Pacific Northwest evenings. Rain pattering on the windows, kettle steaming on the stove, my golden retriever Bowie snoozing near the front door. I remember just feeling chill. Kind of tired, but in that good, productive way. The house smelled like lavender from the candle burning in the corner, and my playlist was playing low in the background. The street outside was dark. Our little neighborhood in Eugene doesn't have many streetlights, which I usually like. Less light pollution means better stargazing on clear nights. It was around 12:45 a.m. when Bowie suddenly jolted upright. He didn't bark right away, just gave this low, almost questioning growl as he stared toward the front window. It pulled me out of Photoshop immediately. I muted the music and listened. Nothing. Just the rain hitting the windows and the faint spin of my laptop fan. Then Bowie barked. Loud. Not his usual someone's walking a dog bark. This one had tension in it, like he meant business. I walked over, pulled the curtain aside, and that's when I saw him. There was a man standing on the sidewalk. Just standing there, about 20 feet from my window. He was wearing a dark raincoat with the hood pulled up, hands in the pockets, and he was staring straight at my front door. At first, I thought maybe he was a neighbor walking home. Maybe he stopped to check his phone, but he wasn't looking down, wasn't moving, and it had been raining off and on all night. No umbrella, no backpack, just him. I stood there for a full minute, waiting for him to do something. Knock, walk away, even look around. But he stayed locked in that position, like a statue. Bowie kept barking, backing away slightly toward the kitchen like he didn't want to get closer. I grabbed my phone and took a blurry picture through the glass. Then I hit record on the security app. I only had a cheap front door camera, but I figured it might help. Still, something about the guy unsettled me enough that I didn't want to confront him. I locked the deadbolt, drew the curtain closed, and went to the back of the house. About 10 minutes later, I peeked again. He was gone. I finally relaxed a little and tried to settle Bowie down. He paced around, clearly still on edge, sniffing under windows and growling at the front door. That should have been the end of it. Just a weird guy passing through. But then around 1:20 a.m., I caught movement on the TV. The screen had gone black after the playlist stopped, and in the faint reflection, I saw something pass by the living room window. Not a shadow, a clear shape. A man. Moving slowly. I ducked behind the couch and crawled to the corner window. This one looked out toward the side yard, near the hedges. I moved the curtain just a crack. There he was again. Same raincoat, same posture, except this time he wasn't standing still. He was walking the length of the house, pausing at windows like he was trying to see in. I couldn't tell if he was looking for a way in or just trying to make me uncomfortable. He didn't carry anything. No flashlight, no phone, just kept circling like he had all the time in the world. I turned off every light in the house and grabbed the biggest knife I could find in the kitchen. I didn't have a weapon beyond that. I sat there with Bowie curled next to me, both of us dead silent. At some point, I lost track of him again. No footsteps, no knock, no sound of retreat. I checked the front camera. Nothing. I started doubting myself. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was someone looking for a lost dog or trying to get out of the rain. I was just starting to calm down when Bowie growled again. This time it came from the back of the house. I tiptoed toward the kitchen, phone in hand, and slowly peeked out the back window. Beyond the wooden fence under the back tree, I saw him again. just standing there, facing the house. He didn't move. That was it. I called 911. The dispatcher was calm, took my info, said an officer was already nearby and would be there in a few minutes. I stayed put, kept the lights off, didn't move from the kitchen. When the police arrived, I met them at the door and pointed to where I'd last seen the man. But by the time they checked the yard, he was gone. Just empty space. I showed them the security footage. Blurry. Not helpful. The man had never approached close enough to get a clean shot of his face. One of the officers said, kind of casually, "We got a similar call from 2 blocks down earlier. Same description. Same behavior." He didn't elaborate. Didn't seem too surprised either. That stuck with me. They offered to sweep the neighborhood again, but said they probably wouldn't find anything. Suggested I keep my doors locked and maybe invest in a better camera system. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't work the next day either. Instead, I went out and bought 3 motion lights, a full camera kit, and a smart lock system for the doors. I moved Bowie's bed away from the front window. From then on, he slept in my room. I started carrying pepper spray when I checked the mail, and every time it rained, I kept the blinds closed. A few days later, my neighbor across the street came over. She mentioned seeing a man in a dark raincoat standing in her backyard the same night it happened to me. She hadn't called anyone because he hadn't done anything, just stood there. I showed her the footage. Her face went pale. She said it was the same man. That night, I had nightmares. Not of being attacked, but of waking up and seeing someone standing outside my window again. Just standing, like he belonged there. What still gets me isn't just that someone was outside my house. It's that he never knocked. He didn't try to break in, didn't shout or threaten. He just watched, waited, moved with this creepy patience like he was used to it, like this was a routine. And if someone does that enough times, to enough houses, eventually someone opens the door. I still live in the same place. I haven't seen him since. But every time it rains and Bowie lifts his head in that alert way, ears up, nose twitching, I pause whatever I'm doing and listen. Because there's something about a man who doesn't knock. He's not there to talk. He's there to be let in. And if the only thing stopping him is your door staying closed, then you better hope your locks work. Because people like that, they don't go away. They wait, and they watch. And they can always come back. Have you ever had one of those nights where the vibe's just heavy? That was it. I'd stayed late after school grading essays, comma splices, awkward metaphors, and all, and barely had time to eat before the power blinked out across the neighborhood. Classic Texas winter. Ice storm warnings on the news, and the grid doing what it does best, failing. My name's Laura. I teach 8th grade English at a middle school in Plano, and I live alone with my dog, Dipper, in a 1-story house tucked near the edge of a wooded park. It wasn't my first power outage, and I had a little routine for it. I lit candles in the living room and kitchen, pulled out the old camping lantern from the closet, and checked my phone. 83% battery, enough to last until morning if I didn't doom scroll. The place got quiet real quick. No hum of appliances, no TV noise, no furnace clicks. Just the wind outside and frozen branches creaking like something out of a horror movie. The silence had a weight to it. It was that thick, uncomfortable kind of quiet. It made the house feel smaller, like the walls had inched inward. I set up camp on the couch, wrapped in a blanket with my lesson plans abandoned beside me. I had just started reading when I realized Dipper wasn't by my feet like usual. I found him standing by the back door, staring, not barking, just alert. I assumed he needed to pee before bed, I pulled on my boots and opened the door, and the cold slapped me. I stepped out with him, hugging my sweater close. The yard shimmered with frost, our little patio furniture looking glassy under the dim sky. Dipper didn't run out like usual. He crept forward, sniffing the air, tail stiff. That's when everything stopped, because I saw it. Just past the fence, in the wooded tree line, maybe 10 or 12 feet away, there was a light. A small rectangular glow, cool blue-white, unmistakable, like the light from a phone screen. My first thought was maybe it was a neighbor. But the yards don't back up to anything but the trailhead that leads through the woods. There shouldn't have been anyone there. The glow wasn't bobbing like someone walking or checking messages. It was steady, pointed, aimed at my kitchen window. I froze for a second. Dipper growled, not a bark, but a low warning sound I'd never heard from him. I stepped back inside and locked the door behind us, blew out the candles, turned off the lantern, let the dark settle over the house, listening for something. When I peeked again, the glow had moved. Still faint, but now it was shifted a few feet to the left, closer to the fence. I hadn't heard footsteps, no crackling leaves, just the eerie, silent repositioning of whoever or whatever was out there. I grabbed my phone and texted my brother Mark. Told him there was someone outside with a phone. He called immediately, and I whispered what I saw. "I'm on my way," he said. 10 minutes. Don't go out there." Dipper started pacing around the kitchen, growling like something had him spooked. I crouched beside him, holding my phone, watching that light drift again, closer, then further, like whoever was holding it was looking for the best view. That 10 minutes stretched forever. I kept waiting for a knock, for footsteps, for the sound of someone hopping the fence. Nothing came. Just that quiet, creeping dread and the unshifting stare of a glowing rectangle from the dark. Finally, headlights splashed across the front windows. Mark had arrived. I ran outside and waved him down. He was already grabbing a flashlight and a crowbar from the passenger seat before I even reached him. We went around to the backyard. The flashlight lit the way, bouncing across ice-glazed branches. He called out, "You're trespassing. Leave now or we're calling the police." Nothing. But when we reached the back fence, we found the proof. There were shoe prints, clear ones, deep enough in the frosted grass to tell they weren't old. Not boots, sneakers, narrow, maybe a size 9. The tracks came from the woods, stopped just short of the fence, maybe 6 feet from my kitchen window. Then they vanished. No trail leading away. No turn in the grass. Just a muddy imprint that said someone had stood right there for a long time. We stood there a minute too long, scanning the trees, waiting to see movement. Nothing. Mark didn't like it. Neither did I. We went back inside and locked every door and window. Then we called the police. 2 officers arrived about 20 minutes later. They walked the yard, saw the tracks, and jotted a few notes. One of them asked if anything had been stolen or if the house looked tampered with. I said no. I told them about the light, how it had aimed right at the kitchen window. He nodded, not surprised. "We've had reports like that," he said. "People casing houses during blackouts. Sometimes they record, sometimes they don't. They couldn't do much without a face or clear footage." They gave me a number to call and suggested motion lights, cameras, the usual. Then they left. Mark stayed the night. Dipper curled up next to him for once, not hogging the bed. We didn't sleep much. Every pop of ice in the trees made Mark sit up. We didn't speak about it until morning. When the power came back, the lights felt jarring, too bright, too artificial, but comforting in a way. Like we had finally acknowledged we weren't alone last night. The following weekend, I installed a floodlight system, put cameras on every corner of the house. I even moved some furniture inside to cover sightlines into the kitchen window, just in case. The next Monday, one of my students, Jasmine, who always notices too much, raised her hand in the middle of a grammar lesson and asked, "Miss Carter, are you okay? You look tired." I smiled and said, "Just couldn't sleep during the storm." Which was true, but not the full truth. I didn't tell them how close that light was, or how it drifted like it was looking for the right angle, or how the police never found anything. I didn't tell them I still peek through the blinds every night before I turn out the lights, or that Dipper now barks at nothing, often. Because someone was out there. They weren't trying to break in, they were watching. And that's somehow worse. I've always considered myself a practical person. I work in IT, which means I spend most of my time dealing with things that either work or don't. No middle ground, no room for ghosts or gut feelings. My name's Daniel. I live in Bozeman, Montana, quiet neighborhood, good insulation. You hear things when they're out of the ordinary. It was a Friday night in late August 2021. My wife and kids were visiting her parents in Spokane for the weekend, and I was relishing the rare silence. I'd finished a full week of client meetings, firewall installs, and too many video calls. So I made myself a late dinner, leftover pulled pork sandwiches, if you're curious, grabbed a book, and settled into bed around 10. The house was still. No cartoons blaring, no dishes clinking, just the sound of my ceiling fan spinning and the now and then creak of old floorboards shifting in the cold like they always do at night. I had some jazz playing softly from my phone, a glass of bourbon on the nightstand, and a dog-eared paperback in my hand. It was the kind of peace I didn't know I'd missed. It was around 11:30 when I heard these soft, dull thuds from above. Just haste, like footsteps. At first, I assumed it was one of the neighborhood raccoons, or maybe a squirrel. It wouldn't be the first time something tried to nest near the attic vent. But these were too spaced out, too heavy. I paused my reading and listened. 3 steps, then silence, then another 2. It sounded like it was coming from the part of the roof above the bedroom. I got out of bed, cracked the window, and listened. Nothing out there. Clear sky. But those footsteps? Definitely not an animal. But something felt off. The pacing, the distance between the steps, like someone carefully placing each foot to minimize noise but not quite managing to mask it entirely. So I went outside, slipped on some shoes, grabbed the heavy-duty flashlight from the kitchen drawer, and stepped into the yard. The grass was damp from earlier rain. I swept the beam of the flashlight up toward the roof and saw it. A ladder. Not mine. I keep mine locked in the garage. This one was propped against the side of the house near the guest room window. A tall, silver extension ladder, the kind painters use. The metal was wet with condensation, and the rungs, when I looked closely, had visible boot prints on them. Still fresh, still glossy. I stared at it for a moment, trying to rationalize. Did a neighbor leave it there by mistake? Did someone borrow mine and return the wrong one? But no one should have had access to my yard. I angled the flashlight toward the roof. I couldn't see the top from that angle, but I could see partial footprints on the edge of the shingles, a smear where someone had stepped and slipped slightly before continuing. I stood there for a minute, just listening, straining for the tiniest scrape or shuffle. Nothing. Then I did something I'm still not sure was brave or stupid. I pulled the ladder down. If someone was still up there, they'd have no easy way down. I backed up toward the door and texted my neighbor Tom, who lives across the street. Former Army. Big guy. Reliable. I figured if I was being paranoid, he'd at least laugh about it with me later. But if I wasn't, he replied within seconds, said he'd be over in 5. I waited on the porch, eyes never leaving the roofline. Still nothing. Tom showed up in jeans and a flannel, flashlight already in hand. He didn't make jokes or second-guess me, just nodded once and said, "Let's take a look." We did a slow perimeter check, calling out. He climbed up with my ladder while I stood below, light trained upward. Nobody. No sign of movement. No tools left behind. No bags. Just boot prints, some still damp on the shingles. Tom scanned the yard from the roof and called down. Could have been a prank, but they weren't light on their feet. Whoever it was, they were looking for something or someone. We checked the rest of the property, locked everything again, moved the ladder into my garage and shut it tight. Tom offered to crash on the couch, but I told him I'd be fine, mostly because I didn't want to admit I wasn't. That night, I didn't sleep. I left every light on in the house, kept refreshing the camera feed on my phone. Nothing more happened, at least not then. The next morning, something made me go check the shed out back. I hadn't opened it in months, mostly used it for old bikes and busted lawn tools. I keep a lock on it, but it's one of those basic slide bolts you get at the hardware store. Easy to cut if you're determined. The lock was intact, but it was hanging slightly open, not fully clicked in. I slid the door back and looked inside. Empty, except for a pair of gloves sitting on the workbench. Heavy-duty black rubber gloves. The kind used for electrical work or breaking into places without leaving prints. And they were warm. I touched them without thinking, then immediately wished I hadn't. They smelled faintly of sweat and rubber. Whoever left them hadn't done it long ago. I stood there staring at them for longer than I care to admit. Then I stepped back, shut the shed, and replaced the lock. Later that day, I installed additional cameras, one for each corner of the roof. I bought motion lights, ordered window alarms, even looked up how to reinforce the attic access hatch. I called a contractor to inspect all the roof vents and skylight latches. I even checked the crawl space under the house. My wife thinks I overreacted. I didn't tell the kids, but something about that night didn't add up. Someone went up there, and when they realized I was home and alert, they disappeared. No damage, no entry, no theft. They didn't want what was inside. They wanted to see how far they could get. And I have a feeling they'll try again someday. Only next time, they'll know the layout, the timing, the weak points, and I'll be waiting. I'm not what you'd call a paranoid guy. I live alone, yeah, but I enjoy it. I'm a 25-year-old remote video editor in Fresno, California. I work weird hours, mostly at night, which means my sleep schedule is not great. Around 2 a.m. is usually when I'm most awake, cutting footage, gaming, ordering takeout, whatever. It's quiet, no interruptions, and I can focus. My place is nothing fancy, but it's mine. A one-story, two-bedroom rental with a little yard, a detached garage, and an old wooden shed out back that's seen better days. Most nights follow a pretty predictable pattern. Work a bit, eat something frozen, game until I crash. I always lock up before midnight, partly out of habit and partly because my dad drilled it into me growing up. I live in a decent part of town, not the safest, but far from the worst. Still, I'd never had anything even remotely sketchy happen until that night. It was June of 2023. Hot, dry air. One of those nights where even with the windows cracked, it felt like the heat was just sitting in the house. I was deep into a game. Headset on, lights low, bag of chips within arm's reach. Just a regular Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, depending on how you look at it. I just finished a match and was loading into the next when I heard the sound. A rattle. Not from the game. Not in my headphones. From the front of the house. It was subtle at first, like someone testing the doorknob. Jiggle, pause, jiggle again. Just a little metallic scrape that somehow felt way too loud in the quiet. I muted the game and sat there, totally still. The silence in the room felt dense, like it was pressing against my ears. I waited, thinking maybe it was just the metal shifting from temperature changes. Fresno summers can make things expand and creak. But then came the second sound. Not from the front, from the back door. The exact same sound. A twist, a rattle, like someone was turning the knob slowly, methodically. Now I was on my feet. I turned off the TV, killed the lights. My house isn't big, just a one-story, two-bedroom. I could move from the living room to the back hallway in seconds. My heart wasn't racing exactly, but there was this tension in my chest, like something was tightening, turning. From where I stood, I could hear everything. The next knob was the garage door, then the side door to the laundry room. Each one, touched, rattled, in order. No knocking, no voice. Just this low, mechanical sound of each handle being tested, one by one, as if someone was cataloging weaknesses. It wasn't random. It was like they had a checklist. I don't own a gun, but I do own a metal bat I bought as a joke during a late-night Walmart run with friends. I grabbed it from under the couch. It wasn't funny anymore. I ducked behind the kitchen island, phone in one hand, bat in the other. I dialed 911, trying to keep my voice low as I whispered what was happening. The dispatcher stayed calm, told me to remain where I was and keep all the doors locked. Units were on their way. And still, click, the handle to the side gate. Then silence. But even the silence didn't feel like relief. I remember looking toward the hallway and realizing I'd left the blinds cracked open in the office. I crawled over and closed them, but for a second, I swear, I saw a shadow shift by the neighbor's fence. I stayed there, crouched and holding my breath, for what felt like forever. I was thinking through the layout of the house, the escape routes, wondering if I could make it to the car, wondering if I should even try. Then the noises stopped. No retreat, no footsteps, just nothing. 15 minutes later, the cops arrived. I let them in, explained everything. They did a sweep, didn't find anyone. No damage, no signs of forced entry. But what they did find were oily smudges on every single doorknob. Front, back, garage, shed, even the latch to the gate. Like someone had worn gloves, but the kind that still left a trace. One officer crouched near the back door, shining his flashlight at the print on the glass. He looked up and said, "Sometimes it's a test. See who's paying attention, who locks up." That line stuck with me because nothing was taken. Nothing was even touched beyond the doors. It wasn't a robbery. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. The next morning, I walked the whole property again in the daylight. That's when I noticed something else. Something that stopped me short. Just to the right of the shed, in that narrow space between it and the fence, I saw a beat-up camping chair I'd never seen before. Mud-streaked, sagging in the middle, like it had been sat in for hours. Next to it, hidden in the tall grass, was a crumpled hoodie. Black, damp, heavy with dew. It looked like it had been tossed there in a hurry, or left behind after someone waited too long. The hoodie gave off this weird, musty smell, like wet earth and sweat. It was the kind of thing someone might wear if they didn't want to be noticed. No logos, no color, just blank. That freaked me out more than the night before, because whoever it was, they hadn't just tried the doors. They had been on my property. They had watched. And they left something behind. I installed cameras that afternoon, bright motion lights, reinforced the doors with extra deadbolts. My dad helped me screw bars into the back windows. I picked up pepper spray, practiced using it, started locking the shed with a new padlock I could barely open myself. I even started parking my car with the front end pointing out, just in case I ever had to leave fast. That same week, a guy down the block said he noticed a van parked across from his place for a while. Engine off, lights out, but didn't think anything of it. And I haven't had an issue since. But it's made me more cautious. I double-check locks before bed. I keep my phone charged at night. I haven't told many people about it, mostly because saying it out loud makes it real in a way I don't like. My friends laugh it off. They say I probably scared the guy off, that it was just some drifter. But I don't think it was random. Not with that pattern. Not with how methodical it was. Every time a doorknob clicks, even during the day, I pause. because now I know what that sound really means. Someone was trying to come in. They just hadn't decided when. If the idea of someone lurking outside freaked you out, smash that like button, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next stories, and tell us how you'd react when the handle starts turning. And if you think road trips are just music, snacks, and sunsets, think again. Click now to watch 4 disturbing road trip horror stories. Trust me, next time, you'll keep your windows up. Stay ready, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.